cool. How are you? I'm so glad you could make it. I mean, it's totally cool. And I have a really cool book for you. A really cool book for you this week. But before we begin, remember, we don't have a shop, we don't have Patreon, we don't have what is it, man? Sponsors! We have a shop. Let me take that again. Before we start, remember, we don't have sponsors, we don't have advertising, we don't have Patreon, we have a shop. And in our shop, we have groovy t-shirts, we have templates that'll help you with your writing, we have mentoring sessions, and we have readers' reports, and we have books like this one, or this one, or this one, or this one, or even this one. So go over to the shop if you want to check those out. Most of them are fiction. One of them is to help you write. But go over to the shop, check them all out. The links are below. Now that we got that out of the way, we can start with our book. And our book is a Scottish book. I know, I haven't really read that much Scottish fiction, but it's a Scottish book. And it's by a man named Alasdair Gray. And I've got to be a bit careful where I put my fingers because it's got a bit of a, it's got nakedies on the cover, and somehow YouTube doesn't like nakedies because they're prudes or something. But anyway, I don't think it's too much of a problem for me because I'm not monetized, but some people really have a problem with that. So anyway, Lanark it's called It's a Life in 4 Stories. I'll see if I can find you a picture on the inside that is less problematic. Now, that actually is the point. Each of the 4 books of Lanark have a front piece, a picture. And all these pictures are drawn by the author. The author was not, he is dead now, was not only an author, he was a muralist. And that is a really important thing to keep in mind when you read this book. Now, Lanark, as I said, is a story in 4 books. The book doesn't just begin in media res, the book begins in the 3rd book, with the titular character, Lanark, has arrived in the city of Unthink. And Unthink is hell. Unthink, actually, every city in here is Glasgow. Everything in here is Glasgow, which is the author's city. But Unthink is this near empty Gothic Victorian city where people are huddled together in dark cafes and different places where unemployment is high. Lanark arrives and is taken to where he can get unemployment benefits, and then he hangs around this cafe with other people in the city. In the city of Unthink, everyone has a disease. Everyone has a disease. And the diseases have different qualities depending on the individual. Lanark and actually the woman he's interested in, Rima, have what is called dragon hide. I will explain these in a bit. And that while others, there are 2 women in the story called Nan and Gay, and they have mouths that grow all over their bodies. It's a very strange place. Lanark is then as he is slowly being utterly taken over by the dragon hide, which transforms you from a human into a dragon, like a literal dragon. He then finds himself, he wishes out and a mouth appears on the floor. And this is where all the people have been going. This is where the people of Unthink have been disappearing to. They have been swallowed up by these mouths in the floor that take them to the Institute, which is under the ground. And in the Institute, they either cure people of their diseases or they use them. And so Lanark is cured of his dragon hide, but he also meets other people and finds out how the Institute works and meets people who are cured become doctors to then cure others who have their same illness. And he cures a woman of dragon hide only to discover that she is Rima. And this is about where the third book ends, when Lanark wants to find out. He meets the Oracle, and the Oracle tells him about how he came here. And how he came here, the first and the second book tell us the story of Duncan Thor. Duncan Thor is very much, to a degree, based on Alasdair Gray's own life. As a boy, Duncan Thor is a precocious writer, precocious drawer. He comes from Glasgow. He is evacuated out of Glasgow when his father gets a job at a hostel that is part of the war effort. He returns, he goes through school, he goes to art college. This is the 1950s, that unique period where they had the art colleges, and if you know anything about mid-20th century English pop, and obviously this was, as Scotland and England are not independent countries, so independent cultures. This is a Scottish book, not an English book. The art college system was not only in England, but also in Scotland. You know, this is the art college that Paul McCartney and John Lennon went to. This is art college like Pete Townsend went to, like Freddie Mercury went to, like Keith Richards went to, like Charlie Watts went to. Lots and lots and lots of people came out of the art colleges in this period. So so he goes to an art college, but Duncan Thor is, I honestly found this the hardest part of the book, because while I could really get into I really quite enjoyed Unthink and its creepiness and its dragon people, and I would have actually liked more time in Unthink and explored that a little further. Don't worry, we get back to it. But I would have actually enjoyed that part of Unthink more. It's very surreal, very Angela Carter-y. Now, he is after Angela Carter had already started writing, and especially her more surreal qualities had been coming through in her novels. I'm not going to say that she's an influence. It reminded me as a reader, having read both now. This actually is nothing like Angela Carter, so, you know, I'm not saying surrealism can come from a variety of different places. Her surrealism came from Japan. She didn't start writing that really surrealist stuff till she went to Japan. Alasdair Gray is not influenced in any way, shape or form by Japan. He's influenced by Scotland. So very different, but I liked that element of it. The thing that annoyed me most, I think, about Duncan Thor is he's a very insecure character, but he actually comes off quite, because his insecurities make him cruel and cold, and he comes off as a bit incel-y that you sort of wonder, there's a certain mean streak that is like, I really hope something nasty happens to him, and I hope not something nasty happens to him, but he doesn't hurt anyone else on the way down. Thank goodness that's what happens. But you do get that sort of, there is a certain incel-y quality to Duncan Thor. The fact that his name is Thor is as in Thor, Thaw, like thawing frost, gives you an indication of his character. He is cold in life and cannot connect. Unthink is cold as a city and cannot connect. And thus, Duncan Thor is afflicted as Lanark with Dragonhide, which makes you cold and armored and unable to connect with people and retaining all your heat within, and eventually the dragons spontaneously combust when they are used to fuel the Institute. The other interesting illness that occurs are the mouths. The mouths are only ever seen on the female characters. Not all the female characters, because Rima is, of course, Dragonhide, as I explained, and she's almost completely fully dragon by the time that Lanark saves her. But the mouths are quite interesting. These are mouths that turn up all over someone's body and make them permeable and are not under the owner's control. They do not speak. Other things speak through them. And so they're really, it's really interesting in terms of a discussion of what exactly are these representing. If the dragons represent a lack of intimacy, a lack of warmth between characters, then the mouths on the women would represent a lack of agency, a lack of an ability to be have that power for themselves to express themselves clearly, because they're constantly drowned out by the clamor of all of these mouths talking through them. It's quite creepy. By the fourth book of the series, Lanark, it again returns to Unthink, but Unthink has shaken off the diseases, because if Duncan Thor dies because he cannot connect with other people, and the city is dying because it will not connect, the protest movement that it has been happening in Unthink finally breaks out, and the whole community is renewed. The grotesque actually causes renewal. People are so overwhelmed by these things that are happening that to individuals that they change their society and renew it. And then the diseases, by the time Lanark returns, not only are the diseases gone, but Rima, who has been had been as passive as all the other characters, becomes a lot more assertive, a lot more, she has a great deal more agency. And she's pregnant and has a child with Lanark. It is, I won't tell you the whole story, but it's a really fascinating book. The thing that I noticed most about it is understanding that Alasdair Gray is a muralist, and there is a huge mural that forms a central aspect of Duncan Thor's his disintegration ultimately. But think of going into a large area like a church, because this one has a church, and viewing the novel as images around the church. And you start at 3 because the thing that's on the wall in front of you is the third panel of the mural. And you have to go back and retrace your steps, and then that third pace makes sense, and then you move through to the fourth. But it's also not linear. in that same way. I think visual, it's not visually linear. It's not like a comic strip. It's a mural. It is an intuitive read. Things are shown to you in to a sense with association rather than, especially when it comes to the order of the books, rather than in terms of linear progression. Time is very odd in this book, the way that time passes, not only in the book itself, but also for the characters. So you just sort of sink into it and let it envelop you and look at it the same way that you would look being inside a mural. It's not going to be, it's not straight, it's not a fantasy novel in that way. It's not, because I don't read fantasy. I really don't read fantasy. I find that they're very dull. This isn't a fantasy novel. This is a surreal novel. It was released in 1981. Okay, so it's not actually, it's about 41 years old. Absolutely worth having a look. It took me 2 goes to read. It was another one of those books. I read the first part of it, and then the abrupt adjustment from Lanark to Duncan was just, what is going on here? Why am I in the Second World War? I was just in Unthink, and now I'm here, and what's going on? I would suggest have a look at a synopsis. It won't wreck it, trust me. It might just help you orientate yourself the same way that having a art handbook would help you with viewing a huge mural, a huge artwork. It is not something that you just, it's not written in that straight, yes, let's just trundle through the story. It is a life. It is a full life. And is just a very odd, it's an odd, good, but odd reading experience. So if you're up for an odd reading experience, Lanark, A Life in 4 Books. Check it out. Scots really have a different way of looking at the world. They might be speaking English, but this is not an English novel. So anyway, peace and love, and I will see you again with another book later. Peace. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.